Hello and welcome to the ASIAL online briefing. For those I've not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Peter Johnson, ASIAL's Compliance and Regulatory Affairs Advisor. Today we also have the pleasure of hearing from Chris Delaney, ASIAL's Workplace Relations Advisor, John Fleming, ASIAL's General Manager, and Dr. Gav Schneider from the Australian Security Research Centre. Dr. Schneider will provide information on ASIAL's major industry support program, Horizon 2025, but more on that later. A number of areas will be suitably covered by Chris Delaney, so I'll take this opportunity to provide a short presentation on matters that remain relevant and others that will present themselves in the near future. Hopefully we'll leave sufficient time for questions. We continue to see COVID impacting on our business operations. Some jurisdictions continue to respond in a quick and efficient manner, and others struggle with appropriate and meaningful and timely decision-making. From a national perspective, continuous border closures have significant impact on business, which includes our industry sectors. In all of this, it has been recognised that state governments continue to hold tightly onto their positions and the protecting of their sovereign rights. It continues to reflect on the difficulty in achieving national standards and compliance for not only our industry sector. I need to impress upon all that we continue to have a responsibility to ensure that we maintain a current COVID plan that is easily activated and capable of merging with and meeting client requirements when we attend client sites. It is important that we ensure staff wear appropriate PPE and that we maintain detailed records of staff movement to assist with contact tracing if and when required. ASIAL has communicated with all governments to highlight the frontline work security provides and to encourage discussion and decisions to include security in the soon-to-be-released COVID vaccination program. We encourage security organisations to liaise with their clients, especially those who have been identified as priority vaccination areas, such as the health and aged care sectors, to have security staff identified within their vaccination programs. A current topic of discussion is the federal automatic mutual recognition of occupational registrations. In short, this is a proposed legislation that recognises that a person registered in the home state is entitled to carry on those activities in a second state. Such a move has been requested by ASIAL for many years. Mutual recognition only applies to individuals and not to businesses. Although during recent time, ASIAL has made submissions to government to have businesses included in mutual recognition legislation. However, that has been rejected. ASIAL's submission supports the legislative change as it would bring relief to those security providers, particularly in border areas. It is unfortunate that following communication with security regulators, we have been informed that security regulators will request an exemption from the legislation if it is introduced, and that request for exemption will be on the grounds of public safety concern. We're also informed that any approved exemption will potentially have a life of 5 years. ASIAL has also submitted that if regulators are provided with an exemption, we want government to direct regulators to engage with industry to develop a suitable model for automatic deemed registration for occupations in the security industry. With Private Security Act in Victoria is under review, and Chris will highlight some of the IR areas being considered. The legislative change is being driven by IR matters, driven by the union with the support of the Victorian government. Some of the suggested changes have been matters raised by ASIAL as areas of concern for many years. Although changes are yet to be finalised, and the government will release a document for industry and public comment, that document may be released in May, June 2021. It is anticipated that any change, once approved by Parliament, would take effect late 2021, although more likely 2022. ASIAL's initial response to the review of the Private Security Act is available on the ASIAL website. I believe changes to the Private Security Act in Victoria will include areas to strengthen compliance surrounding subcontracting, remove registrations and include registrations, a Class B security activity, into the licensing area. It'll hopefully easing administration duplication and red tape. Renewal training has also been discussed, and initial training for security in stores is on the agenda. Following the postponement of the ASIAL board elections in 2020 by the Australian Electoral Commission due to COVID-19, the AEC has advised that ASIAL board elections will be conducted this year. The AEC will open nominations on Friday, the 19th of March 2021, and close nominations at 12 noon on Friday, the 9th of April 2021. The AEC will then conduct the election via mail and communicate with all eligible corporate members. As all elections, and we can only encourage members to actively participate in the election process. On that note, I will close and introduce Chris Delaney, ASIAL's Workplace Relations Advisor, to provide an overview of the industrial relations landscape affecting security industry employers.
Hello, I'm Chris Delaney, ASIAL's Industrial Relations Advisor, and this is an overview of some of the issues affecting the security industry in 2021. 2020 was a pretty difficult year and lots of things have happened. Many of you will be aware that just before Christmas, the federal government presented a bill to Parliament to reform the industrial relations system. Some of these things are going to have an effect on us over the next year or so. However, we're not going to see any great changes for at least some months ahead, but we will certainly see a lot of strong debate in federal Parliament. The reforms that they intend to pursue include changes to the enterprise bargaining system, making it a bit easier for employers and employees to reach agreement, changes to the Better Off Overall test. They're looking at simplifying modern awards, although I'm not too sure why they want to do that. They've just spent 6 years simplifying them, so another 6 years doesn't seem to be a terribly good idea. They want to make changes to the definition of casuals, and I'm going to talk a lot about casuals today because that is going to be the big ticket item for the security industry in 2021. And they're going to talk about compliance and enforcement mechanisms, which is also interesting because right around the country at the moment, various state governments are looking at changing regulations and making enforcement more stringent. Nobody seems to have done that so far, and that would have been a very big help for our industry. So in the meantime, we've found at the end of last year, the Fair Work Commission have changed the Clerks Private Sector Award. And that decision really relates to clerks or admin people working from home. Now, a lot of security employers have admin people, and throughout COVID have had them working from home. These changes will affect what employers and employees can negotiate for employees working from home over the next little while, at least until June 30 of this year. If you've got any questions about that, you should really contact me and we can talk it through. I'd now like to talk about casuals, because casual employment in our industry is a very significant factor. How casuals are paid, what the definition of a casual is, and a number of decisions of courts and, of course, the federal government's reforms will have an effect on us over the next 12 months. In fact, many of you will know about Skeen and WorkPac and Rosetta and WorkPac, and those decisions of the federal court and the full federal court are now going to the High Court. Now, there are no dates set for that, but WorkPac has been given leave to appeal to the High Court and will be appealing the decision through them and making their submissions by the 11th of March. Now, I know that seems like a long way away, but it comes up very quickly. We will need to keep a very close eye on that because it will tell us about how the High Court sees the casual relationship when it's worked regularly and systematically, and whether or not those casual employees are entitled to both the 25% loading and the accrual of sick leave and annual leave. Now that's going to be a big deal for us. Now, we have had a casual overtime decision in the Security Services Industry Award 2020. That's the new award, the 2020 award. And that decision went in our favour. We made several submissions to the Fair Work Commission on that. And essentially, it says that the casual loading, the 25% loading, is not included in the overtime rate when calculating overtime for casuals. A very important decision. It's good for us. And if you need to know more about that, again, contact me. And my contact details will be at the end of this. Now, Victoria has also started to do some things about casuals, and the Andrews government has announced its intention to introduce a secure work pilot scheme. In essence, it is to provide casuals with 5 days of sick leave and carers leave, so that they will go home and go sick rather than go to work and carry the coronavirus with them. Now, a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to the problems that occurred in Victoria recently with corona. However, it looks like it's something that the government is going to implement, and the implications are that some way down the track, employers are going to pay for that. So again, we need to keep a very close eye on that, and ASIAL will be making representations and submissions to the Victorian government about that. Now, some of you will have completed the casual survey carried on by Wollongong University on our behalf. The results of that are in. It was very disappointing that only 50-odd security companies attempted that survey. And of those 50-odd, only about 75% completed the survey. The information I have is that after about 3 minutes, people left it. Now, that could be as a result of the survey being difficult, or it could be the result of a whole range of different things, people being interrupted and so on. Having said that, the preliminary results are very interesting, and they should be able to assist us in any submissions that we make to government, both federal and state, that relate to how casuals are used, the definition of casuals, and what's most important for our industry. So we will have those survey results out as soon as we can. Now, the definition of casuals, as I said before, is going to be decided by the federal government. That could be an issue over the next little while. I think there are several definitions floating around, and we'll keep an eye on that too. Now, last year, ASIAL ran a case in defence of an application by the United Workers Union to vary the hours clause in the Security Services Industry Award 2020. At that stage, the award was 2010. Now, what the union wanted to do would have reduced the flexibility that employers have to roster employees and roster overtime over a roster cycle, whether it be 2, 4, 6 or 8 weeks. Now, we've had lots of arguments with United Workers Union when they were United Voice and the Liquor, Hospitality and Miscellaneous Workers Union over a long period of time, and this is the culmination of all of that. ASIAL spent over $100,000 defending that case, and we were successful. Now, that's a very, very big milestone for us because we were able to ensure that members were not adversely affected by the submissions made by the United Workers Union, and that they were able to continue to do their work in the same way that they did before. In other words, the court said that employers were free to choose the day on which a roster would begin, so it doesn't have to begin on a Monday. They were free to choose whether overtime hours would be included in a roster and at what point they might be included, for instance, a Saturday or a Sunday. They were free to decide the number of days on which ordinary hours might be worked over that roster cycle, and they were free to fix the number of days of the week in which ordinary hours were to be worked. Now, all of that sounds a little bit complicated, but really what it says is that we can do what we've always been doing. and what ASIAL has always advised its members to do. And we can get on with the job of allocating rosters in a flexible way so that we can do our business. Some of you will know about our attempts to develop a subcontractor code of practice. That's been up on our website for a while. We're getting to the very pointy end of all of that now, and we will we'll find that we'll have a document that we can put to our members, a code of practice that provides professional levels of approach to the use of subcontractors in our industry. The attempt that we're trying to make is to lift professionalism, remove the opportunity for people to be involved in sham subcontracting, and protect the prime or head contractor from problems arising out of non-compliance. Now, they're the main issues on a national basis, if you like. Some of you will be aware that WA has passed its Work Health and Safety Bill, which will bring it into harmonisation with every other state, with the exception of Victoria. There are certain things that need to be ironed out with that bill. It's gone before the WA Parliament, and the likelihood is that it'll be very much the second half of 2021 to early 2022 before it's implemented, and we need to keep an eye on that, and ASIAL will be providing you with information on that. Queensland has introduced a wage theft bill, and that bill provides for criminal convictions and penalties for employers that deliberately rip off, steal from employees. Now, the penalties are significant. They're anything up to $200,000 for an individual and $1 million for a corporation. And there are custodial sentences of up to 14 years in certain instances. And now this is an issue that is arising in many of the states at the moment, and we need to keep an eye on that. And as I said so many times before, we will keep you advised of what's happening so that you can run your business to the best way you can. Now, there are some payroll taxes issues in New South Wales that have changed, and those of you in New South Wales will know that the threshold has been lifted to 1,200,000, which is not going to be a big deal for a lot of people, but it is at least a change in your favour. The review of the Private Security Act in Victoria, as you all know, or should know by now, that review has been taking place for some time, and ASIAL has presented submissions on what it believes should be the changes to that bill. Again, that legislation rather. Again, a lot of emphasis is on ensuring that licences are not given to people who shouldn't have licences, and that individuals should be restricted in the sense that we shouldn't have student visa holders carrying security licences, nor should we have holiday visa holders carrying security licences. Invariably, those people end up having an ABN, an Australian business number, and get involved in sham subcontracting. And that is a big problem for our industry. For those of you who have to compete with shonkies, that's an area that needs to be fixed in Victoria, and it needs to be addressed in Queensland. We've spoken to both of those states about those things many times in the past, and will continue to do so on your behalf. Finally, we have been running a campaign, albeit it seems to be a little bit of a quiet campaign, about the use of cash in the community. Cash has copped a bit of a hiding through the COVID period, and we need to ensure that the general public know the value of using cash. It's much cheaper than using credit cards or debit cards or any other form of electronic payment, and that polymer notes do not carry the coronavirus like perhaps paper notes do in other countries. That's a bit of a roundup on what's happening. There is a lot happening. I know it probably doesn't sound like much, but these things take a long time, particularly when you're dealing with bureaucrats. If you have any questions about industrial relations, any questions about enterprise bargaining agreements, unfair dismissals, disputes with employees, government, or the Fair Work Ombudsman or unions over your employment relationships, you can contact me, chris@asial.com.au or ir@asial.com.au, and I'll do my very best to answer any questions you have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Chris, for the informative briefing. I would now like to introduce John Fleming, ASIAL's General Manager, to provide an update on the broader ASIAL and industry issues.
Good morning and welcome. My name is John Fleming. I'm the General Manager for ASIAL, and I'm glad to be here today to let you know about some of the things that are happening within the security industry. This morning I'd like to start off with the ACMA, the Australian Communications and Media Authority. ASIAL is a registrar for cablers through the ACMA, and the ACMA 2 years ago did a major review into the cabling industry and whether the requirement was still there for regulation. It's just been announced through ACMA that through their survey and review is that they're going to continue to regulate the security, fire, electrical industry for cabling. This is a great result because an unregulated market would be problematic. This way it ensures that the people working in the industry are fit for purpose and they comply with all safety guidelines. So we're very supportive of the ACMA decision and looking forward to continue working with ACMA in the future. ASIAL has also engaged Nielsen. Nielsen are a powerhouse research company, and what we're looking to do is go out to approximately 1,600 people across Australia to get a feel for how the general Australian public feel about security, either their own personal security and or their workplace security. This research has started 2 weeks ago. We're hoping to have all the field work done by the end of February, and we want to produce a report for the members in March. Nielsen are really trying to get a pulse on why or how Australians think about security. We can then use this, or members can use this for conversations with prospective clients, really about using the data then to enhance that conversation and have a real pointer to how people feel about security. We can also use this for work with government. That gives us an opportunity to talk about standardisation of standards across Australia and requirements. And we're also going to use this as a yearly index for ASIAL to have a look and see how that trend is trending, whether up or down, whether security is getting a bigger slice of the cake, and whether people feel more secure by the operations provided by our members. ASIAL is also conducting a quick survey of members, basically what we're calling a perception audit, to get a feel for how you feel the security industry is perceived within Australia. We've got 4 key questions on there. Basically, what is the future of security? What do the public think of security? Do they value security? Do we have enough engagement within the industry? And secondly, do we have enough engagement with policy and regulations? So the survey is open at the moment. It closes on Friday the 19th of February. So I'd urge you all, if you can, jump on the website, grab that survey. It's probably 5 minutes at the most, and we'll get a perception of how you feel about security in Australia today. We're also continuing development work with Standards Australia. So the current standard that we're working on is the AS 2201 Part 2, which is the monitoring centre standard. The committee, which is AL31, have pretty much finished all of their work. The document is now with the editors of Standards Australia. So we'd hope to receive that back within the next 4 to 6 weeks with the editorial comments. Once that's all cleared up, we were able then to go back out to the market, to the members, with the document for public comment. So watch out for that document when it comes through, because this is very important for monitoring centres and the monitoring of alarm signals for the future. Second part on that is some of the other standards which are in that same suite, 2201 Part 1, Part 3, Part 4 and Part 5 in particular, the transmissions. We've done all the proposals for Standards Australia. They need to be just tightened up a little bit more. I talked with the engagement managers last week. We'll put the final submissions through before the end of February and hope to have those projects approved. They will then be transferred over to the committee, which is AR31 for development for the future. So continuous work on standards, which I believe is very important for the industry. And we'll let you know as soon as possible when the new monitoring standard comes out for comment. And last but not least, we're looking forward to having industry breakfast engagement meetings face to face. So we're going to start off, the first one that's booked is Queensland on the 3rd of March. Then we're going to move to Sydney, New South Wales, which will be on the 11th of March. Then we're going to South Australia, which is on the 17th of March. And then last but not least again will be ACT on the 14th of April. So fingers crossed, COVID's on the back foot, we're able to have live meetings again. All these meetings will obviously be COVID safe, and we'll follow all government regulations to ensure that these meetings can go ahead in a safe environment. So thank you for today, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you, John. As an industry, we certainly have our challenges, but I think we are in good hands with experienced industry representatives like John. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Gav Schneider. Dr. Schneider is an experienced industry leader in the security and risk management sectors and a research associate at the Australian Security Research Centre, and will provide information on Horizon 2025 initiative, an ASIAL project which aims to support growth in the private security industry.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabriel Schneider, the research lead and project lead for the very exciting Horizons 2025 project that we are conducting through the Australian Security Research Centre on behalf of ASIAL. What is the study about? The objective is primarily to focus on looking at how we can support the growth and development of the private security industry in Australia, and look at how we can further professionalise and enhance its overall capability. The primary aim, realistically, is to make sure that we plot a structure of where we are so we can figure out where we're going to go. So if we look at the aims of this project, first and foremost, if we don't know where we are, it's exceptionally difficult to figure out where we need to go and how we're going to get there. So the first part of our study is really to try and figure out how big the industry is, what it does, and its strengths, weaknesses, and other associated operating considerations. We will then be looking at where do we think the industry will be in 2025. And while none of us has a crystal ball and can predict the future, what we want to do is try and look at some very likely trends. We can't do this alone. We really need your engagement, and I'll talk about that shortly. But what we need to understand is what are those challenges and what are those opportunities that we need to take into account to really make sure that we can support the industry growth and development. We'd also really like to understand who those key stakeholders are, the role of those stakeholders to help us achieve what the industry needs to be in 2025. And lastly, we'll aim to identify these key growth themes, these aspects that are going to impact all of us, whether you are in man guarding, whether you're an integrator, or whether you're involved in electronic or cyber security. There are some key themes that are evolving. And one of the aims of the study is to identify those themes so that we can all start to work together to create a more effective, robust, resilient, and contributory security industry. So how are we going to do this? We're starting this off with a robust document review, which is looking at any published data regarding the security industry in Australia, trends of the security industry, and we will also be looking at international studies and international papers that tell us where the industry is in other countries and where we think it's going to go. Really, for a study like this to work, though, we need input from you, the experts, practitioners, and suppliers of security services, as well as the users and regulators of security services. We will gather that information in two ways. Firstly, there will be an online survey, which we would strongly encourage and request you to complete and distribute as widely as possible. The more respondents we get, the more accurate our understanding of where the industry is and where it can go will be. We will also be running a series of focus group workshops, which we would encourage you to attend, where we'll be trying to gather more in-depth information on where you think we are and where we're going to go. ASIAL will be putting the information on how to access the survey and how to get involved with the workshops up on their website and be sending that out to members soon. So what will you get out of this? The first thing is we will produce a robust research paper, but we realize too that most of us are too busy to read academic research. So we plan to be providing briefings on what the research project found and what the key trends are. But we will also provide ASIAL members with a simplified roadmap on how to align your business, align your thinking, and set yourself up to be able to thrive in the year 2025. And this roadmap, we believe, will become a valuable resource for all players in the security industry. But to make it a meaningful document and to have a meaningful outcome, we really need your participation. So how do you get involved? Please, again, send the survey out, complete the survey when it does come out. We know surveys can be cumbersome, but this is still one of the best ways for us to gather data and get your input. Please do, if you are somebody who feels you have insights about where we are and where we're going and how we need to get there, please do respond to the expression of interest that ASIAL will send out to participate in those workshops. If, for whatever reason, you weren't able to complete the survey or participate in any of the workshops, please do contact our lead researcher, Dr. Paul Johnston, or myself, or contact ASIAL, who will then provide us with the information or connect us with you. Please do join us in what will probably be Australia's largest study in the private security industry, looking at how we can future-proof ourselves and ensure that our industry is a valid and robust contributor to not just the Australian economy, but to the safety and security of Australians and Australia as a whole. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing your feedback in the surveys or at one of the workshops.
Right, Gav, thank you very much for that. Really appreciated. And certainly we appreciate the support of the ARSC, and we know that the survey is going to be important, and we know that we need to know where we are to know where we need to get to, and that's very important. In relation to the Q&A, and John Fleming unfortunately is not able to join us today. But we do have the Q&A, and we encourage everyone to put their questions in the text box, and we'll certainly try to answer them without trying to take up too much more time. I have one question at the moment which I'll take on board. It's got, with the multiple independent security advisory groups and many national regulators controlling both the physical and cybersecurity industries, do you foresee the formation of a single national security regulator being established in the near future to oversee many facets of the security industry under one set of guidelines? I would love to say yes, but to be honest, no, you won't get it. We are controlled by a lot of constitutional rights, responsibilities of governments. Regulators do not want to release their sovereign rights within their own jurisdictions. And we see this happening in relation to the mutual recognition legislation that I talked about. We believe and have discussions that the regulators will ask for an exemption, and we won't get that licensing. So we won't get the mutual recognition licensing. So to see that we're going to have a national body running security, it's not going to happen. So no, it's not going to be there. So from that point of view. Now, another one in relation to John's area was that in the which survey do I fill out? Well, ASIAL members have received an email in relation to the ASIAL survey that closes tomorrow. We just encourage you to fill that one out, and that's due to close tomorrow. So please get that one filled out. As Gav said, surveys can be a little bit sometimes time-consuming, cumbersome, but that's the only way we're getting our information in from discussions we're having, and we need that so those surveys completed from that point of view. There's one, one for you, Chris, if you could. When will the subcontracting code of practice be available? What of you can assist us there, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. We've spent a lot of time on the subcontractor code of practice. We've got I think the penultimate document at the moment. We're hoping that we will be able to get something out in mid-March.
All right. And I guess that other one that comes to you that's come up is when will we know if we have to pay sick and holiday pay for the casuals? You said casuals are a big part of our industry, which they are. So when's the hammer going to come down, and when are we going to know if we have to pay that?
Look, that's a bit like how long is a piece of string at the moment, unfortunately. The government reforms that are in the omnibus bill are going to be very hotly debated over a period of time. They are designed in a way to reduce the opportunity for that double dipping to occur. Whether that gets up is not going to be until much later in the year. In the interim, we've got the High Court appeals for those cases with Rosato and WorkPack and Skeen and WorkPack. Both of those will have some influence on whether or not that double dipping can take place. So, look, the short answer is got absolutely no idea. Hopefully by the middle of the year.
All right. There's another one come through in relation to how do I vote on the ASIAL board elections, and we indicate that the Electoral Commission has announced the elections. ASIAL doesn't have anything to do with the actual election process. It's one managed by the Electoral Commission, and they will communicate with all corporate members who are eligible to vote. There's some time frames in relation to the register of members, the duly appointed persons, and the dates are there. But if you do need to communicate or need any further information on the election, the Australian Electoral Commission, if you don't know how to contact them, give ASIAL a buzz. We will send you out the contact person's details and also the email address for them. So that's what's happening there. Another one came through was when this mutual recognition outcome. The federal government's trying to move this legislation to come through in July, and we anticipate that in the broad sense, everyone wants it. The regulators want it, the governments want it, but that's in theory. In practice, there's barriers. But we think the broad legislation will come out in July, and as a result of that, we believe security will be exempt. I don't like to say that. No, we don't have documents to prove it, but we have had conversations with the regulators, and sometimes comments through the side of their mouth and otherwise comments directly. And I draw your attention to Cameron Smith's recent New South Wales regulator, Cameron Smith's recent LinkedIn communication, where under mutual recognition, they received an application from a person from interstate. They had to receive that application. That same person a while later applied for a master license. They had to go through fingerprints, and through that process, that person was apparently found to be ineligible to hold a license in New South Wales, and they were able to act. It's that sort of inconsistency we have in Australia that causes these regulators to say we don't trust every other jurisdiction. It's not about not trusting the industry, it's just they don't trust the processes that support the regulation process in all jurisdictions. So when you see comments coming from a regulator like that, we naturally see where they're going to stand, and they have actually articulated that openly to us. But some haven't formulated their positions, but we know that they have all, in theory, agreed that they will apply for exemptions. Now, anyone else, if you have any other questions, please come through on our chat box. Certainly from that point of view, if you ever have any questions, and Gav, I guess one from you, you're doing the presentations around Australia for the 2025 process. You've got a number of different presentations. Who are they for? What sort of groupings are they for?
Thanks, Peter. So please do check the email that came out from ASIAL. I think it was early this week or late last week, which provided an expression of interest. We're running 9 different workshops, and they're running towards the end of next week. They're only an hour and a half long each, and you'll see once you reply to that expression of interest, we've divided them into small, medium, and large providers. We've looked at regulators, we've looked at associated industry players, we've looked at cybersecurity, and we've also looked at federal and state governments. So as soon as you send your expression of interest into ASIAL, they will be able to come back to you with what the most appropriate workshop for you to attend will be. And don't stress, if you land up being in the wrong workshop, you'll still be a valuable contributor, and we would much rather have you involved and hear from you than not.
Yeah. All right, excellent. And I believe you do have some limits on numbers in those workshops?
Yes, we're trying to keep those workshops down to around 16 to 20 people, just because A, virtually it's quite hard to wrangle lots of different opinions, and B, we would really like to get insights from the people who are willing to participate, as opposed to just collect raw data. The raw data collection will happen primarily through the survey.
Yeah, excellent. And the ASRC, in relation to that and the ability to actually run these smaller workshops, is to actually give people that voice and to actually capture the appropriate information and opinions.
Absolutely. And as mentioned in my earlier talk, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't with 100% certainty say where we'll be in 5 years, but input from people who are working in the industry and who are leaders will help us plot a more realistic and accurate pathway. So please, ASIAL members, there's no point doing research for the sake of research. We want it to be meaningful, and we need your insights and input.
And I also believe you're running a workshop for regulators as well?
Correct.
Yeah, and this is where we find that ASIAL has developed a good relationship with regulators around Australia, but we must realise that the regulators find that there's variations, and we need to know where their position is, and it'd be great in relation to those where we see the ASRC, what sort of response they get from the regulators. It'd certainly be an interesting one, and we need to educate them, and we need to see where they need to be. Just in relation to that mutual recognition one, in relation to a nationally recognised transferability of those licences, the thing being is we as an industry need to know where they, what concerns they have, so we can address those issues. And as I indicated in the presentation, if they get 5 years exemption, we've now got 5 years to get our act together to achieve something within this time frame. And I think Gav, the ASRC support and the surveys and document and the research that you'll be providing will give us that platform to actually move forward on. So certainly everyone needs to support this process and realise that from a membership point of view, from an association point of view, we're only as strong as our members, and we've got a lot of variety of members. But the thing being is, you've all got an opinion, you've all got a position, and we need to hear about it. Sometimes we may not achieve outcomes for everyone that everyone likes, but we're looking for the broader industry and the representation of members and our industry. So from that point of view, there's no other questions coming up. So what I'd like to do, thank you very much for your time. Gav, thank you very much for your time. Christopher and John, we do these recordings because we're all in different locations, and it's better if we can present them with a bit more consistency and stable platform, and then hopefully get together for the live Q&A. Apologies that John hasn't been able to join us through unforeseen circumstances, but I do thank you very much and encourage you to keep your eyes on the ASIAL webpage for all our industry briefings. Unfortunately, Victoria's not going to have a live breakfast for a little while. We're still wondering when we're going to go in the next lockdown. Hopefully not. The thing being is, we need stability in the management of COVID-19. We need the ability for our industry to get out there and provide service to our client base in a professional manner. And so, everyone, I'd like you all to stay safe. Thank you very much for joining us. Certainly been appreciated, and good luck in your endeavours and moving forward. Thanks very much for attending.